When I started doing that, I noticed that the peduncles came back and they started getting juicy, but it is craziness. And at first I was like, I don't think this peduncle will actually do anything, until it actually went to the next step. Oh, we're serious. Oh, okay, sure. Yes, of course. Yes. Bloom, please. I have full faith in you. I always did. Hi, we're back. My name is Stephanie, and I like talking about my houseplants, and I like to share tips on how I care for my plant collection. In today's video, we'll be talking specifically about Hoya. I know I post a lot of Hoya videos, but I have a strong feeling that's why a lot of you visit my channel. Am I right? If I'm right, give the video a thumbs up to let me know. In May, I actually created a series called 30 Days of Hoya, where I talked about the care of 30 different Hoya in my collection, my love score, the conditions that they grow in, etc. So if you love Hoya, you may enjoy that video if you haven't seen it already. In that video, I give a lot more tips on how to care for each specific plant that I talk about. But in this video, I'm going to talk specifically about blooming. I am no Hoya expert. I am not claiming to be one. I still have so much to learn about Hoya because I feel like a year and a half is not a lot of time in the grand scheme of things. So what I'm speaking to today is what I have noticed about my Hoya in my care. And maybe there might be someone watching this video who may find value in that. And I'm going to talk about what I did for it to get to that point. Like, how did I get this plant to do that? Because some of them, I've heard a lot of people talk about them blooming for them, and mine did nothing until I did one or two things, and that's when I got some peduncles on them. Peduncle pusher number one. And we're going to start with this one because I think this one is doing the most. With all the plants that I'm going to talk about today, with most of them, you're going to notice there is one thing that helped all of my Hoya to push peduncles. Try to look out for that, and when you discover it, what the one common denominator is in everything, put it in the comment section down below, okay? And then at the end of the video, we'll see if you were right. This is my Hoya Rebecca. No, I'm sorry. This is my Hoya Sunrise. I always get the two names confused. I don't know why I do. But my Hoya Sunrise, I remember that I was saying for a long time, everyone talks about this plant blooming. Mine isn't blooming. Mine has no peduncles. I was complaining about that. And y'all better get ready when you see the amount of peduncles this plant has. And I think I had one viewer who said to me, you wait, when she starts pushing peduncles, she will never stop. So this plant, I've had it, I think for 1 year. So I got it in June last year. Biggest goal for this plant that I had was sun stressing. I wanted to get some serious sun stressing on this plant, because when this plant sun stresses, like, come on, look at the red on this. This is the type of red that I absolutely adore. And I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. The plant does need a lot of sunlight in order to get this level of sun stressing. I was waiting for peduncles. I just kept checking it all the time, looking for peduncles, and there was nothing. It wasn't pushing out anything. Until one day, I went to look for peduncles, and then I realized, oh my goodness, this plant is bone dry. I have it in a self-watering pot, but maybe it was a sunny week and it used up the water way faster than usual. So I was like, oh my goodness, let me go refill this reservoir. And so accidentally, I let the plant dry out for way longer than I usually do. And a few days after that, I started seeing a peduncle form. So right here, but this is an idea of what that peduncle looks like. So it's on my thumb here, that tiny little peduncle you see here. That's an idea of the size and what that peduncle looks like. So the peduncles are basically, it's like a little stick they push out from the main stem of the plant. So I was super duper excited, and every day I would keep checking to see if the tip of the peduncle, so right here, I don't know the jargon on peduncles, but right here at the end of the peduncle is where the blooms will come out of, and it will sort of swell up and create the blooms. And I would keep coming out, keep checking to see if it'll do something, but nothing. It wouldn't do anything. And again, I accidentally let the plant dry out, and the peduncle fell off. A lot of people I know do this deliberately. They will stress out their Hoya by underwatering it to push it to bloom. It's not something that I personally want to do to my Hoya. It's not a type of care style that I want to have. I don't want to do that because I just feel like it's such a slippery slope. Very easily you can let that go too far and it can get rotted when you water it again. I've noticed that with some of my plants, that's how they bloom. I wouldn't advise it, but I know some people will deliberately do that to prompt blooms. But secondly, another thing I learned from that is that when it has a peduncle, if you let it dry out again, it will drop the peduncle. So once you see that peduncle there, do not let your plant completely dry out. Stay on top of it. Eventually, when I noticed it pushed that peduncle, and then I noticed, okay, it's trying to bloom. We're getting somewhere. I need to stay on top of things. So I kept watering the plant. I kept eyeing it. I kept only bottom watering again for self-watering pots. I kept refilling the reservoir, keeping it fresh. And as we got into summer and we're still in spring, and we got longer days and a couple sunnier days, look at that. We were able to get some really nice, juicy peduncles. Peduncles are actually quite hard to show on camera, but this is so beautiful. So it has now given me a sea of peduncles. So many. And just like that viewer said, once your Hoya Sunrise start pushing peduncles, they do not stop. It does not stop. I've been making sure I keep her hydrated. I stay on top of the watering. When I started doing that, I noticed that the peduncles came back and they started getting juicy. They started filling out, and the bottom here is where the blooms are gonna come out of. A lot of them look like they're going to ripen around the same time. So it is just going to be an intoxicating bloom in terms of the fragrances that's gonna come out. I hope I'm gonna like it. I've actually have not looked up the blooms to see what they look like. We'll do this in a second, and together we'll get to see what they will look like. At first I was going to wait until they actually pushed out the flowers to see, but I decided to film this video, and why not find out together? That's so exciting. I'm very happy that she's finally pushing a lot of peduncles. And if you look right here, see how the water is halfway in the reservoir? I'm actually going to top this up. So I'm not going to let the reservoir go all the way down, especially because she's so heavily pregnant with peduncles. I know I say that a lot, but because she has so many peduncles, I don't want her to dry out. I want her to explode with peduncles and growth and just have everything she needs to perform at her best. Like I said, I wanted to see the blooms for the first time when the plant had blooms, but you know what? Let's just do it here. Let's just look at it together. I'm on Instagram and it has some really nice blooms. It's very lacunosa-like. The white, mostly white, looks very juicy. It reminds me a lot of my Hoya Crassipetiolata. Like Crassipetiolata, lacunosa, they have very similar blooms. So I'm just going to insert maybe a picture on one side of my Crassipetiolata when it blooms, my Super Silver and Sunrise blooms. So they look very, very similar. Oh my goodness. And she seems to be a very generous bloomer overall. And I'm super excited about that. Oh, I think I prefer her trailing. I think trailing is the way that I want her to grow. I think it's true that I won't be able to see the blooms as nicely as much. Let's just start with her trailing and then we'll see how I feel about it afterwards. But anyways, that's it. That's my first peduncle pusher, like a serious peduncle pusher. All right, so the next plant is a plant that you already know is a huge peduncle pusher. But in case you're new here, I have a lot of new viewers, people who came in from 30 Days of Hoya. So maybe you've never seen this plant before. Maybe you only saw it on 30 Days of Hoya, but this is a Hoya Patricia. This has also been in my collection for a year. So I actually got the Hoya Sunrise at the same time on the same shopping trip from Crystal Star Nursery. The Hoya Patricia, this one, although it wasn't that big, maybe just a little bit bigger than the Sunrise, it was mature. So the Sunrise, when I got it, that was a juvenile plant. And so that's number 3. So I talked about 2 things before about Hoya and getting them to bloom. A third thing is that Hoya typically most Hoya, not all Hoya, because I'm going to show you one that's not in line with this. Most Hoya have to mature before they bloom. So they're not going to, let's say you just got a Hoya a couple months ago and you got a cutting. That plant, a lot of times, not every time, it needs a couple months. Like it needs sometimes at least 9 months to a year of growth, getting established, especially if you don't repot it a whole lot. It needs time to get established for it to then feel mature, and then it's going to start pushing out peduncles and blooms. But this plant, when I got it, it was already a mature plant. So it seems like it was a plant that the nursery maybe used to take cuttings from to create other plants, and then they finally decided to sell it. I just picked it. Actually, I picked it not for foliage, but because I was going to gift it to my mother. Her name is Patricia as well, her first name. But when I gave it to her, she didn't like it. She preferred another plant that I got, so I gave her that instead, and I kept the Patricia. I tried to sell it, but nobody bought it, so I kept it. And it has been by far the most generous bloomer of all of the Hoya in my collection. But again, it could be because it was just more mature when I bought it. So this plant, like I've shared with you before, it just pushes peduncles like crazy. I often lose track of how many peduncles this plant has. It's a very generous, like I said, a generous bloomer. I couldn't tell you how this plant originally bloomed, like what it needed to bloom, because I'm not the one who got it to bloom the first time. But I will tell you that I have noticed that when I keep it hydrated, the blooms, they mature faster. So it will have peduncles. So when it came, it had peduncles. So again, these are peduncles right here. But if I keep the plant dry, the peduncle will not progress. It will literally just stay bare. And this plant, I find it to be very thirsty. So that's why I love this new self-watering pot that I got from it. It was a recommendation from Jenna's Plants. I don't like that the inner pot is opaque. I love my transparent self-watering pots, but this does have a big, much bigger reservoir. With this plant, I think a bigger reservoir is better because I just could never stay on top of the watering of this plant. Big reservoirs are great for plants that use up water quickly, but plants that use up their water a lot slower, like don't waste your time, because you're gonna have to replace the water in the reservoir long before the plant uses it up. So again, just a little tidbit. Just keep that in mind when you buy pots or when you want to pot up a plant. But anyways, that's the lesson that I learned from this plant. Keep them hydrated and it will continue to push out peduncles and give you nice blooms. The first couple times it bloomed for me, it had no scent. Even when I went up to it, smell it, no scent. The last time it bloomed for me, finally I could smell it, but at night, it's a very faint scent. I actually don't remember what it smells like, but I think I have a clip of me describing the scent in a video from a few months ago. I may cue the clip in here. What does it smell like? I would say it smells like roses. All the other Hoya have a very sweet scent. It's almost like a cut your throat. It's so sweet scent. This one is more of a very delicate, polite, light rose, red rose type scent. That's the best way I can describe it. The next plant is one that, which one should I talk about first? I don't know. Okay, let's just pick it because it's right here on the floor. Shocking. I know, you're surprised. I never thought, well, okay. I can't say I never thought, but I was surprised when this plant pushed a peduncle. In case you don't know, this is a Hoya Crassipetiolata splash. It's a plant that gets a lot of airtime on my channel because it is one of my favorites Hoya in my entire collection. I actually thought of doing a Hoya favorites video this month, but I know I've been sharing so much Hoya content, especially with 30 days of Hoya, that I decided to just make this video instead. So this guy, the Hoya Crassi, so here's what happened. I've been checking out this plant every day, but I look at all my plants every single day when I'm home. Sunrise would start pushing out peduncles and this plant was doing nothing, and they get pretty much the same care. This is also in a south facing window. How is it that the Sunrise is pushing peduncles when this one is not? They're getting the same care. And I also water them just about the same time. If anything, I underwater this more than I underwater the Sunrise. But here's what happened, and it's not what I'm saying to do. The plant fell down. I was so sad. I thought that it was gonna freak out, but it didn't. Instead, from the stress and trauma of falling down, it pushed a peduncle. I don't know. I know I'm not gonna say that this is a tip. So this is probably one of, not a very useful one, but I don't think I did anything special. So I don't have any answer on how to get the Hoya Crassipetiolata to produce a peduncle, but I do think that Hoya will produce peduncles when they're stressed. Again, not something that I will intentionally do to my plants, and I would not suggest that you go knock your plants over and try to get them to produce peduncles. I have observed that Hoya, when they're stressed, they will produce peduncles. Or could it be that this plant is super mature? I don't know. It had a completely full rack, but this part of it right here, the bottom part, the whole thing, just like the Hoya Sunrise, filled up with that part. And then it seems like it's slowly starting to mature. That's where the blooms are going to come out of. And I'm not sure why all of them didn't mature at the same time. I'm not sure if that's just how it goes, but I do have other Hoya that I'm going to share with you where all of them mature at the same time. So I don't know if this is just this plant or maybe I let it dry out too much. It's not that I let the reservoir get too low, but if you look here, the wicks aren't extremely long. So sometimes the water level gets lower than the wicks can reach. And so I think the plant doesn't have as generous of an access to water as it would like. Nothing awfully insightful to share about this, because absolutely not. I'm not telling you go knock over your plant. Who knows? Maybe it was already about to produce a peduncle and it just happened to be at this time. I don't know. But it could be, like, again, we say stress pushes Hoya to push peduncle. That's this guy. Another thing I would say while I look this up is I would not touch Hoya peduncles. So this has happened to me before where I have touched the peduncles while they were still very juvenile and they fell off. Again, it could have been coincidence. I wouldn't recommend touching peduncles at all. All right, so let's see the Hoya Crassipetiolata. Let's take a look at the blooms. Oh, it's so cute. So it seems like I have a lot of Hoya with white blooms. So these have the most beautiful, juicy white blooms with a little bit of purple on the inside and a little bit of yellow. That's really nice. That's really pretty. Oh, that's so pretty. So pretty. Oh my goodness. So pretty. I'm excited. I'm excited for more blooms on this plant. Oh, so pretty. And apparently they look like plastic. Yes, I'm excited. I'm excited. Hopefully my plant will push more peduncles, more than that one peduncle. And again, if your Hoya is producing a peduncle, never cut it off, even after the plant already has used up that peduncle. Even if all the blooms fell off already, once that peduncle is there, leave it, because the plant will continue to push out new blooms from the exact peduncles. I'm sure you knew that already, but just in case you didn't, don't do it. Don't cut them off. Have I ever done that? No, I've never, but don't do it. Don't cut it off. The next peduncle pusher is this guy. And this is a Hoya Bella. And you're by no means surprised at this plant because the Hoya Bella is a very generous bloomer. Like, it is a plant that breaks the Hoya rules when it comes to blooming. It doesn't need to be mature. You could have a cutting and the cutting will try to start blooming. Like, it is just, it's really funny. It's almost funny how determined the Hoya Bella is to bloom. It's pushed a couple peduncles, but the peduncles will dry out. I must say their peduncles dry out quite easily as well, but you know, it's not very concerning because it will just keep pushing more peduncles. So let's see if I can get it to focus on peduncles. It's hard trying to get a camera to focus on peduncles. They're so small, but that's it here. It has these downward turned peduncles and it looks like it's right there, like it's about to open up. I have had this plant bloom for me many times before. It and the Hoya Patricia are, again, the most generous bloomers. If you want a plant to start blooming for you, you're just excited to get your first Hoya bloom, this is definitely a Hoya Bella. And no matter which kind you get, they all are very generous bloomers. Because let me show you. That Hoya Bella that you just saw lives in a west facing window, But again, even under grow lights, it still bloomed for me. So this is my Hoya Bella variegated. This guy lives under Sansi grow lights, like harsh, direct grow lights. And it's pushing a peduncle hair as well. Some Hoya, their blooms will be similar. So I think that's why a lot of people will get Hoya for their blooms rather than their leaves, because they want to have different blooms. But I prefer leaves because I get leaves way more than I get blooms. Yeah, and sometimes it can be hard to get a Hoya to bloom. But anyways, that's this little guy. Also quite thirsty, and I do find that I have to water it quite often, and that's probably one of the reasons why it blooms so much, because they use up so much water, and most people probably don't even realize that they're dry. So cute. I almost lost it so many times, and I'm just so happy that it's come back. But again, this is like the Hoya Bella inner and outer variegated, all in the same pot. Okay, so the next plant, if you watch my channel, you already know this plant. You've seen it a million times before whenever I talk about blooming Hoya. This little guy had to make it to the peduncle pushing party. This is my Hoya Rangsan. The Hoya Rangsan, and I feel like I see two types of people talk about this plant. People who are like, this plant will not bloom for me, and people who are like, this plant will not stop blooming. So this plant I debuted on my channel a little bit earlier this year, because this was a plant that I had in the past. I lost it. My friend replaced it for me, and I was just so scared of it because I do find it's a fussy plant. I have it growing entirely in perlite with leca at the top in a self-watering pot, and this plant is one that just refused to push new leaves for me. And at one point I had it right here. So I used to have a shelf here back in the day instead of a cabinet. And during the winter, because the sun is a little lower in the sky, the sun would come in from my west window and hit this plant right here on the shelf. That's when I noticed it started pushing peduncles. And I was like, oh, so you like sunlight? Okay. So I decided to push it into my west window. I decided to push it straight into the window. And when I did that, the plant went nuts. I think I counted over 15 peduncles on this plant at one point. I have an entire video where I'm like trying to count all the peduncles, but it is craziness. It has bloomed a couple of times from the peduncles, and so again I'm gonna leave it. I'm not gonna chop them off. Also finally started pushing out leaves as well, so that's why it's not pushing as many blooms from the peduncles like before. But I don't mind, because the plant does need leaves to produce food. But look at this super cool peduncle in here, right in the middle, right here, like a double peduncle right here. So crazy. It's just clusters. I've been hoping that it will actually bloom again, but nope, it's just pushing peduncles and a couple leaves. So no actual blooms have come out recently. But again, can't have a video about peduncle pushers without talking about this plant. Like, come on, let's be real. It is like one of the craziest peduncle pushers in my entire collection. A trick, again, like I've said this a couple times in some of my videos, is to replace the water. This is a plant that doesn't use up its water very quickly. So I have to toss and replace the water, or sometimes I will top water because it's in semi-hydro, because it's in this very fine mix. The roots won't stay very wet when I top water, versus in soil or an organic mix that's chunky, I will not top water because that could lead to rot, right? Because the substrate itself will hold on to the water.
Since we're on the topic of watering, I'd like to add that I fertilize my plants almost every time I water. I also sometimes spray them with orchid spray.
Lots and lots and lots of light, west-facing window, and regular and consistent hydration is what works with this plant. So try that. I guess there's a theme here, isn't there? There it is. Oh my goodness. The next one is my Hoya Tequila Sunrise. I know, I am so excited. I'm so excited about this. I've had it for over a year and a half even. It was in like the first batch of Hoya that I started collecting, when I didn't quite understand what to look for in a Hoya when buying, before I started being a little bit more critical as to the type of cuttings I was getting and more selective, I got this plant. And I've said this story before, I wasn't even sure if this was a Tequila Sunrise because at the time when I bought it, there weren't a lot of pictures of Hoya Tequila Sunrises online, and it was so juvenile. It didn't have the distinct look as yet. I think it was only this leaf. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure. I thought I was duped until it started producing more leaves. Finally, this plant lives in my south window. I put it there because I wanted to get the classic Tequila Sunrise sun stressing. I just feel like that is what this plant is all about. It's the sun stressing, and the new leaves, they come out so glossy. Oh my goodness, it's so pretty in person. I'm not sure if the camera is capturing all of it, but it's in this tiny self-watering pot and it's about time. It's ready to be repotted, and I very well could have let it dry out too much, because that's happening because the pot is so small and the plant is getting so big. But in that window, in that south window with lots of direct sunlight, the plant pushed a peduncle. I'm not sure if the camera is going to capture it because it's super tiny. And at first I wasn't going to celebrate a whole lot because I was like, I don't think this peduncle will actually do anything, until it actually went to the next step. Oh, we're serious. Oh, okay, sure. Yes, of course. Yes. Bloom, please. I have full faith in you. I always did. Do I feel like this is a mature plant? Not a whole lot. I don't feel like it's mature, but the plant feels like it's mature. I don't know, but it could be the lighting. I think another thing is when Hoya feel like they're tight, they feel like they're nice and snug inside of their pots. I think that's another thing that prompts them to bloom. I wouldn't be surprised if that was also a factor with this plant. And let's take a look at pictures of the blooms. Oh my goodness, look at that. Isn't that so pretty? I'm just so in love. See that juiciness? Those bright leaves are so lovely. Okay, so they look so much like candy. They're sort of like a creamish color. They aren't white, which is nice. I want to get blooms that aren't white. And the tips of the blooms, so like there's the juicy part. I'm definitely going to educate myself, people. We're going to get educated together. I'm going to learn the bits and I'm going to share it with you. But right in the middle, the juicy parts that look like petals, they're cream, and then right at the tips of the blooms, they're that burnt Tequila Sunrise color. So pretty. My little peduncle is not going to produce this gigantic bloom, okay, because it's still very small. But as the plant continues to mature, and as the peduncle, hopefully if it hangs in there, is going to push out more blooms from that peduncle. So I'm looking forward to it. If we had to wrap it all up and just what did we gather? What did I gather? And I want to know if you noticed what I noticed. A lot of my Hoya bloomed faster under direct sunlight. I do think if I still had them growing under grow lights, some of them would not have produced peduncles by now. This is a whole other conversation for a whole other video that I want to make. But definitely for peduncles, for blooming, I definitely think some Hoya prefer direct sunlight rather than grow lights. Or maybe not all kinds of grow lights help Hoya to bloom. Something that mimics sunlight a little bit more would be better at getting them to bloom versus some of the ones that don't exactly mimic the sun. Definitely underwatering is definitely a factor. I have noticed that if I forgot the plant, if I let it dry out too much, I have noticed that a Hoya will push a peduncle when I let it dry out too much. But again, I find that backfires very quickly, because even if it pushes the peduncle, if you forget to water it again, the peduncle completely dried out. So I would say that's a slippery slope. I wouldn't go there. Again, any stress, which is pretty much the same as underwatering, right? The plant, it gets stressed and it's like, oh my goodness, I'm ending. I'm going to try to reproduce and try to continue myself. Their observation is when you keep them in tight pots. So I think when they're really, really snug and, you know, they feel like, okay, I am settled, I am comfortable in my space, I find that's when they start to push peduncles, because I feel like Hoya are definitely the type of plants who need to feel secure in their substrate, in their pot. When you repot a Hoya, or when you first get a Hoya, comes into a new environment, you just bought it, the plant spends a lot of time focusing on adjusting to the new environment before pushing leaves and pushing peduncles. When you repot it, it's going to put a lot of energy into producing roots and a lot of energy into just establishing itself. And so that's why when we first get Hoya, they take so long to start to push leaves. They take so long because they're just getting established again. And then as they get tight in those pots, they will start pushing peduncles and start pushing leaves. Never let your plant sit in a pot that is way too small for it, because then A, repotting can be very traumatic on the plant, and B, the plant can dry out faster than you can get to water it, and C, the plant will stop growing entirely because it has no room to keep maturing, right? Take all of this with a grain of salt. I think at the end of the day, what I take away from this entirely is that Hoya will bloom when they're mature and when they're ready. So that's my biggest takeaways. If you have other tips on how to get your Hoya to bloom faster, what has worked for you, please share it with us down below. I'm not saying that this is all and the only way to get your Hoya to bloom. By no means am I saying that. I'm just saying that's what I've observed with my plants, with my eyeballs, in my care. So thanks again for watching this video. I appreciate the time you take to do so, and I will see you in the next one.